Welcome along to Obsession Engineering. This is a very, very nice 748 Ducati. Honestly, this one is in lovely condition. Only slight problem is it doesn't work. And so my next job is to try and breathe life back into this Italian beauty. So this lovely example of a 748 belongs to my mate Stu. Hello, Stu. So he tells me he was riding around on it and it just stopped. No nasty clattering noises, no smoke, no fire, no nothing. Literally, it just stopped. And when I inquired as to when it had stopped, it turns out it was about 8 years ago. And since then it's been sat in his garage. And so there is going to be a little bit of work to do before we even try and turn this over. And I have got a couple of ideas what it could be. But I think the first thing to do is put on some overalls and get that thing naked. Taking the bodywork off one of these lovely Ducatis is pretty much the easiest job in motorcycle maintenance. That hints a little bit at what Ducati expected you to need to do with this bike, which is probably take the panels off really regularly. Most 748s, 916s, 996s, 998s had Zeus clips, like quarter-turn speedy fasteners for all the fairing, but they did do a range of 748s with screw-on fairing fasteners to save a few quid. Interestingly, this one does have Zeus clips on some of it, but not all of it. So I suspect at some point it's had the lot changed. Right, panel 1 removed. They really are that easy to do. Nose cone isn't actually much more difficult either. There is a 4mm headed Allen socket holding both of the mirrors on. Well, holding each of the mirrors on, I think is a better way of doing that. And then a couple of fasteners under here. And then the whole nose cone comes off. Really is a really nice, simple bike to work on. I mean, that is quite useful because if you own one of these, there is a fairly good chance you're going to have to work on it fairly regularly, if I'm honest. Seat unit isn't much more difficult either. Key, need to remember where the key slot is. Key in the slot, and the seat sort of wiggles up like that. There is one plug socket here for the lights. That's that disconnected, and then there is a couple of little plastic clips to literally slide out, and that'll be the seat unit off as well. That couldn't be any easier, could it? And that is pretty much all the bodywork off. I am going to take the tank off in a minute because I'm going to drain that, because we don't want to try starting it with fuel that's been sat in it for 8 years, because that's not going to do anybody any good at all. Other than the fasteners that are holding the fairing on, the carbon sort of heel guards, that, as far as I can tell, are the only aftermarket things. Silencer original, clutch covers original, everything basically original, which is really, really nice. Getting the fuel tank off is also pretty straightforward. I need a 5mm Allen key and a block of wood. The block of wood will be obvious in a minute. Right, undo the 1 bolt at the back of the fuel tank. Lift the back of the tank up, put the block of wood in, and then I can get underneath to get to the quick release fuel connectors, which hopefully will still be quick release. Because this is one of the slightly more budget build 748s, so to speak, it doesn't have the quick release fuel connectors on the fuel lines down there. And so what I'm going to have to do is get an Allen key up here and undo the bolts that hold the fuel lines into the fuel pump. So a little bit more fiddly, but it's not that bad really. So part of my reason for wanting to take the fuel tank off was so that I could have a look down the inlets and make sure there was nothing horrible going on down there. So the back one, nice and easy, I can get to it. I've shone a torch down there, we're nice and clear. For the front one, you can't really see down it because it's at an odd angle. So I got my phone and took a photo down it, and it's clear. Happy days. And the next thing I'm going to do is whip the spark plugs out so that I can then try and turn the engine over to make sure mechanically the engine actually turns over nicely. Interestingly, This one at some point has been sort of had the HT lead put back on with a load of silicone around it. So I'm guessing the mechanic, whoever did it last, was doing that to try and stop any damp going down the hole. Spark plugs out, and this will tell us a couple of interesting things. If obviously there's impact damage on there, it means mechanical mayhem has happened inside the engine, but these look fine. Interesting, the one from the back cylinder looks like it's had light use. The one from the front cylinder looks brand new, and so that's interesting. Exactly what it means to me at this stage, I'm not sure yet, but it might mean something later that might all start to make sense. For the next stage, though, I've pumped the bench back up and I'm going to take the battery off, because behind there it gives me access to the cam belt covers, and so this has been sat for long enough that technically it would need cam belts anyway, but I don't want to put any on it until I know the bike is capable of running, because you don't want to throw good money after bad, potentially. But I do want to have a look at them first to make sure there's nothing going terribly wrong. I realise I need to take the airbox out so that I can actually get to the cam belt cover on the top cylinder, the vertical cylinder, the back cylinder, whatever you want to call it. And so there are 6 screws that hold this in. The actual inlet funnels, the bell mouths, literally do a quarter turn and just pop off, and the like quick release tabs for the air tubes come off, and then other than one hose for draining, that is as easy as taking an airbox off gets. This bike is just brilliant to work on. Cam belt covers are off and the belts look okay. They certainly look sturdy enough to at least do sort of the first fire up on the bike, if we get to that stage. After that, it will probably get a new set, just because these ones have been set a while, but actually they're still nice and soft, they're still nice and flexible. I can't see any cracking anywhere. Those will do. So the next thing is try and get the engine to turn over. So on the left hand side of the bike there is a hole in the end of the crankshaft, threaded M8. So I've just put an M8 bolt in with a lock nut on that I've managed to get the spanner in at a bit of an angle, sort of like that, and just nip the lock nut up. And because this bike doesn't have valve springs, because it's on Desmodronic valve train, that means there isn't any spring load to push against when you turn the engine over. So the engine shouldn't take much to turn over. And if you look in that little window, you can see the cranks going round. So that's good news. It's also good news that the rotor is still attached to the crank, because this generation of early bikes wasn't unknown for the rotor retaining bolts to come out. And Stu tells me he's checked that himself, and so I'm not diving in there to check it anyway, but it is nice to see that the rotor's actually going around with everything else and hasn't just come undone and run out of electricity. So with the camera set up on one side and me on the other side, I can turn the engine over and you can see the cam chains, the cam belts turning round, which is a nice little thing. See, if you look in the little sight glass here, there is a tiny little line on the rotor there that lines up with the little sort of arrow, and that means the crank's in a set position. So if I come around this side of the bike, that means that the pulley there is lined up with the mark on the case, and it means the cam there lines up with the mark, that one lines up there, and then on the front cylinder they line up as well, which means cam timing is correct. Engine turns over freely, cam belts actually look okay. So mechanically, this engine should be capable of, well, at least turning over and hopefully actually starting. So my next job is to drain the fuel out of the fuel tank. And I don't want to just stick a sucker in there and pull it out the top. I actually want to run it through the fuel pump, because I also want to check that the actual fuel pump works. But of course, the fuel tank is not on the bike. So I've made a couple of leads up that connect into the fuel connector that sits on the tank. I've checked the wiring diagram. That should be the correct connectors for it. Just tucking that up the way so if there's a bit of a spray of fuel when it fires, it doesn't cover the electrical connectors. And I have a battery over there, which is the new battery for the bike. And so in a minute, hopefully, fuel will flow out of here into my bucket. And hopefully the workshop won't be on fire. Either way, it should make for interesting video. Right, here we go, in an attempt not to set fire to my workshop. Oh, that does work. fuel pump works. And that comes out of there really quite nicely. Hopefully that will drain that relatively quickly, and at least I know my fuel pump's working. Well, now I'm confident that my fuel pump works and I've got rid of all the old fuel. Inside of the tank actually looks surprisingly good. I've put the cam belt covers back on, I've put the little plug on the other side of the engine so that's sealed up, put the battery holder on and a bits like that, and then I thought I'd better check the fluid levels. Probably a good job I did. Coolant I've topped up a little bit. It was only a little bit low, a couple of 100 mil sort of thing, so I've topped that up, and then I went to check the oil level. Couldn't see any oil in the sight glass, and so I've decided to drain the old stuff out, and yes, black would be a very good description of that. It's been a little while since I did a Ducati, and then I remembered there's an extra oil filter that fits in the engine there, this sort of strainer, and if I'm honest, there's some glittery bits on it. There's some spiky bits sticking out the top, but there's also quite a lot of glittery bits, especially down the sort of this end. And that's not good, because this bike is of the age that was renowned for flaky rocker arms. Basically, the plating on the rocker arms fails, and yeah. So, might be doing a valve clearance check on this one as well, to see if anything else is going wrong with it. So on that slightly disappointing note, that is my first stint on the 748 done. But I'll be back by the time you've watched an ad break, so don't go anywhere, I'll be back in a moment. Ah, good, you're back. I hope you've enjoyed that ad break. But while you've been sat there on your sofa or wherever you are, if you're on the toilet I don't want to know, I've been quite busy because I've done the valve clearance check in the Ducati. And that's in a completely separate video, and so that will be out very soon, so you don't want to miss it. So what I thought I might find when I did the valve clearances was some really big gaps where the rocker arms were just wearing away. And I didn't. They were all in spec. There was a little bit of variation between them, but to be honest, when you look in the manual or when you read on the forums a bit of variation with those is not unusual, and there seems to be a different consensus as to where they should be anyway. So all I do know is that that's not going catastrophically wrong just yet. The next conundrum then is, where is the bits of metal in the oil coming from? And to be fair, they could be coming from quite a few places. Don't get me wrong, it could still be the rocker arms beginning to flake, but they're just not showing up in the valve clearances yet. It could be the main bearings on the crank, which is not uncommon in one of these. It could just be normal wear from the gearbox. It could be a bearing somewhere else going. There is a worrying plethora of places bits of metal could be coming from in one of these. And without doing a complete engine strip to try and find it, well, we're not going to find it. Well, not straight away anyway. So what I'm proposing we do is we crack on and actually see if we can get this thing to start. Because if we can get it to start, we'll be able to hear for unpleasant noises, and if I put fresh oil in it, I can run it for a little bit, take the oil back out, and see what it looks like. And that might give us some clues as well. So, onwards with actually trying to get the bike to start, which will mean I probably ought to put a battery on it. But before I do that, I'll probably put some oil in it. Oil first, then battery. Don't want to accidentally start it with no oil in it. Bike is now full of Motul 300V because it wants the best oil in it. So you can see the lovely greenness in the sight glass there. Next thing I need to do is strap a battery to it. I did actually put the other one on charge, the original one, and after about 4 hours charging it got to 5 volts, and as soon as I took it off the charger it died again, so we've given up on that one. I shall put a new one on. Battery bolted on but not actually connected yet, because this bike has an aftermarket alarm fitted to it, which I believe is also an immobiliser. If I'm honest, this is what I suspect could be causing all the trouble. And when I connect the battery, I would expect the alarm to go off. But it might not, because it might be completely dead. Right, moment of truth. Negative terminal, battery that's charged. If I connect this up and the alarm goes off, well, it'll be really noisy. If the alarm doesn't go off, then there'll be questions to be asked about what's wrong with the alarm. Alarm goes off. Damn it, that's quite loud. Right, key fob doesn't work. Right, that's just going to be annoying. You can see the little red LED flashing. That means I've put a battery in that. And I've also put earplugs in. And so now, let's see what happens. Well, that did something. Now if I turn the ignition on. Right, ignition is on. I just need to connect the battery up without anything coming undone again. So far so good. Alarm has turned off. I've not gone deaf. And the bike is turned on. I can hear the fuel pump priming in the tank, and that is good news. There is no fuel currently in the tank because, well, I haven't put any in it because I didn't know whether it'd work or not. But the fact that it's trying to do that is good news. The other thing you'll notice is one of the HT leads is hanging out the side here. There is another one hanging out the front down there. What I'm going to do next is put a spark plug into one of them and see if I can get it to turn over and see if there's a spark. Because if we have a fuel pump priming and we have a spark, we're getting through some of the things that would stop a bike from running. Hopefully you can see this. I'm earthing the spark plug to the cylinder head. Where's my start button? Ooh, yes, a lovely big spark there. That is good news. I've put 3 litres of fuel in it. I'm not expecting it to start, but you never know. I have spun it round on the starter motor enough times to get the oil light to go off and reset the... Just shut up. Reset the oil level in it. So... Well, I didn't expect it to start. Ooh. I also didn't expect it to make those really, really horrible clonky noises. Yes. Well, the good news is the bike starts. Just shut up. The bad news is it does make a distinct clonky noise. So you know I said that that stuff in the oil could be maybe something crank-related main bearing? Yeah, I think... shut up! I think we might have found a problem. So I've disconnected the battery and I've drained the oil out of it, and it's currently running through a strainer on the bench to see if there's anything really obvious in it. But realistically, we know that this engine has cried enough. So there are, of course, 2 options. Option 1 is we find an engine from somewhere and bolt it in. Option 2 is this one gets stripped and rebuilt. But it won't be me doing it. Unfortunately, I don't do customer engines anymore because, frankly, I don't get enough time to do my own engines, let alone other people's. And if it's one engine that you're only going to do once and it's a bit of an oddity like these, there's going to be specialist tooling, there's going to be specialist knowledge, and you're going to have to find the parts from somewhere, which frankly I don't really have the time to do, unfortunately. And so if it comes to us bolting an engine in, we might be doing it. If it comes to this one coming apart, then it will have to go off to a Ducati specialist for a bit of love. And so, for now, that is the end of the 748 project on the Obsession Engineering bench. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been doing, even though it hasn't been terribly successful this time. And if you have enjoyed it, please, a like and subscribe down there really helps the channel. And if you really, really like it, there is merch available, and I'll put a link in the description as well. But for now, thank you for watching, and join me again next time, when we might have some motorbike fun that's actually a bit more successful. Hey, that's life.